22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.
And are not afraid to say it. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You are listening to Black Westchester Presents the People Before Politics radio show every Sunday 6 to 8 on InTheMixRadio.com. Now we have a full show, so we're going to get right into it. I'm your host, AJ Whitson. We got Black by Popular Demand, Damon K. Jones in the house. We got the lovely Lorraine Lopez in the house.
Hey.
And Dr. Bob will be coming in a little later. Real quick, we can't start the show off without saying an official happy birthday to the owner of the station, DJ Cruz.
DJ Cruz.
Happy birthday, Cruz.
Happy birthday.
DJ Cruz. Applause. There you go. Then they got a couple other people. I was working on something just before I walked out the door. Yesterday would have been the 63rd birthday of NBA legend Ray Williams. So we did a little tributes on the front page of blackwestchester.com right now, remembering Ray Williams. Definitely need to check that out. Also today is the birthday of Black Westchester's Priscilla Ichi. It's her birthday today.
Happy birthday, Priscilla.
There's a few other birthdays, and I can't remember, but coming up, though, we have the lovely Lorraine Lopez. Her birthday is the 19th.
Oh,
all right.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
27?
Yeah, 27.
You're going to be 27? There you go. And early shout-out also to my daughter who's on the 21st, Paula Sherelle Woodson.
Oh,
now,
all right.
with that, we are about to get into the show. Lorraine, would you like to quickly introduce our guests?
Yes. We have today with us Jim Chisholm, who is running for county clerk here in Westchester County, whom I'm going to be biased and going to say he's going to be our new county clerk very soon.
Oh, all right. Well, hey, listen, that's positive thinking. That's what's needed in Westchester.
Yes. So, good to have you on the show there. So, you're running for Westchester County Clerk, right?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay. Now, what is the job of the Westchester County Clerk? Because we try to educate people because I actually don't know. So, if I don't know, I'm quite sure there's a whole lot of people listening that don't know.
Well, how about your part of 67%?
Okay, that don't know.
I've been going around for the last 8 months. I'm running for Westchester County Clerk, and they said, "What is that? Is that something you're appointed to? What is it?" So, the best way I can break it down is it's a glorified secretary. It's the person that he or she will take all the records, your gun permits, your passports, your notary public, your state Supreme Court proceedings, all the paperwork, and it's got to go to somewhere, and that's the clerk, and that's the person that's in charge of everything.
Okay. And actually, we do have George Brown is our city clerk at Mount Vernon. He does, I guess, a lot of the same stuff.
Yes,
but
sir.
on the city level, though.
Yes,
and every
sir.
city has their own city clerk. So you just handle it on the county level.
Correct.
Okay, so they got to see you to get a marriage license or something? Do you see this? You're not that guy, right?
No, I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy.
Okay. So what made you want to do the work of the clerk? What made you want to run for clerk?
Well, I've been involved in politics for the last 40 years, and I believe very much in people. You know, I'm not your typical politician who'll come in here and say that I'm the greatest thing around, and I like this and that. I mean, I like everybody, and I truly mean it. This is going to be a one and done for me. You know, if I'm successful.
Whoa. Let me just hold on. I'm sorry, I have to stop you right here.
You mean you're going to just do one term and then that's it?
Yes, absolutely.
That's why I had to applaud it, because I'm going to tell you.
Oh, you're not staying in for the next, like, 99.999
No. Even no
years?
term limits have been signed, you know, where I could stay for 3 terms. No,
Right.
the gentleman in there now, he's in his 12th year and he wants 4 more years. You know, 16 years is just too much.
I
believe in
do.
term limits.
I great. Give him another hand. A candidate that is running countywide that believes in term limits. Give him another hand.
Absolutely. You need fresh ideas. You just can't have people. You know, our forefathers.
You got my vote, shit.
That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
4 years. You got it.
Right. He said 4 years, I'm out. That's the guy you want to vote for.
That's it. I mean, so, you know, nobody
Now,
can come after me or this or
don't
that.
be like everybody else. Be like,
Oh, yeah.
and come back in
No,
3.5 years and be like, you know what? Just 4 more years.
No. I'm 66
people
years
want
old.
me
I'll
to
be
come
70.
back.
Yeah, right.
I'll be in there with a cane. Oh, I told you guys. I didn't really. You know, why you bring that up, there's on the back of the ballot, it's going to be 3 propositions. The convention, I don't want to get into, but I'm going to be voting no. Water, but number 2, there's going to be a proposition on there that, if passed, and I hope's passed, will allow the government to take away pensions from any politician
Who goes
that
to
has been
jail.
Stealing. Well, goes to jail, felony, been stealing everything.
Mount Vernon.
Now,
Oh, man. I'm glad I got out before he became clerk. God darn it, I need my pension.
all right, I hear once people say, well, what if they were there 40 years and then all of a sudden they did something? Well, they shouldn't have done anything at all.
Thank you.
So let's pass it, and let's, you know, like I said, our forefathers did not make these to be jobs where people could be in there forever.
That's right.
And, like, there's no such as indentured slavery and so forth. This is it. Public service is public service. You go out to serve the public. If you're not doing a good job, you know, get the egos out of here.
Right.
You
And
gonna do that applause again with 1,000 people in the back? I just love that.
Yeah.
All right, that's good. Thank you. I'm gonna ask anything
No,
else.
you got like I remember when Doc Cavallo was here and he was like, "Yo, you got senators walking around with oxygen masks and you know what I'm saying? They can barely make it to their chair. You know, they've been there 80 years. You know, and then they there till they die, like literally, like."
Absolutely. Well, you're not getting that with me.
No,
Okay.
that's great. I mean, I truly believe that elected officials need to be held accountable. We got. I will definitely. You know what? I will
Proposition 2.
I will turn the paper over before I vote for actually officials to make sure I mark all those good choices that we need to.
Outstanding.
That we definitely need to make. Now, have you held any other elected position before deciding to run?
No, I haven't, but I've been in politics for the last 40 years. You know, I grew up in Yonkers, was involved with a fellow named Malcolm Wilson. You're too young to know who he
I
was.
gonna say, no,
He was an assemblyman. He was state senator out of Yonkers. Then
Okay.
he became lieutenant governor, and then he became governor.
Oh,
when
okay.
Rockefeller moved up and so forth, ran against Hugh Carey and unfortunately lost. But I have
Okay.
strong roots in Yonkers. I was involved with many things there, then moved up to Eastchester, was involved as a district leader there, then went
Okay.
to up to Somers via Bedford, and I've been Republican chairman there for the last 8 years.
Oh, okay.
You know, people say to me, well, you're a Republican. Well, you know, okay, I'm a Republican. I don't think that's a bad thing, and I don't think I can
It's
be
not. It's not.
I don't think I could be labeled with everybody else, but if you look at the ticket, I'm endorsed by the Republican Conservative Party, which I'll be running with Rob Astorino, but I'm also on the
Hold that against you. I'm sorry.
Okay, I hear you. Just hold down on those little people back there. But I'm also on with Senator Latimer on the Reform Party and the Independence Party. So, I mean, it gives everybody a
Well,
choice.
listen, if Doc says you're a good guy, then you're a good guy.
There you go.
Thank you.
There
Absolutely.
you
Yeah,
I
go.
don't know if he said that. Don't quote me. He gave me the line, though, and he gave it to me before my own Republican chair. But yes, sir.
Well, hey, wow, okay,
yeah, yeah.
damn.
Well, he and I go way back, and I think I was the only
Yeah,
Republican
and
that
that's
wasn't
where I
sued.
think I saw you at the functions, at the
Yes.
Independent Party functions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I said he looks familiar. Then I saw you at Doc's party.
Yes.
All right. Well,
So you
great.
didn't come over because you thought I was with the government or some IRS or something like that, or
I don't know, man.
no.
I don't know, but that's
Businessman for
good.
40
But
years.
so you have the independence line, you have the conservative line, the Republican line.
Yes, sir.
You have those 3 lines.
4 lines:
Oh, what-
Republican, Conservative, Independence, and Reform.
And the reform.
I had the green, or I thought I had the green, but
Did you have
my
a primary?
opponent knocked me off of that one.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you got a good chance.
We'll see what happens. It all depends. If people just vote for the people, then I'll do
Yeah,
all right.
no, you.
Well, unlike his opponent, this guy's actually out there campaigning.
Who's
See, that's what I'm saying.
who
There you
the
go.
hell? What is this? What's the guy's name? What is it? The guy that used to be the mayor of New Rochelle?
Yes, sir.
Oh shit, I'm voting for you, man. That guy
So
sucks.
that's 2 votes. The only one. All right. I know we're not in Chicago, but
you
all
know,
right, I gotta
you know,
count.
Hey, listen, I just went back to the Democratic Party, but I make no bones when there's some people that there's some people that I don't like. Even what doesn't even matter if you're in the party.
What
But-
did they call him? What do they call your opponent?
Oh, there's a couple of them. I don't know if I
He
can say it.
forgets.
Well, he can't say it. You're supposed to have said it for him.
Uh,
He can't say it.
And you know what? And
Okay.
I'm going to tell you.
I don't need a phony.
Yes.
That's what they call him.
Well, I'm going to tell you because I was a part of a community development corporation, and we were trying to work with a church to build a senior citizen home on Lincoln Avenue, one of the oldest African American churches in West
Shiloh?
County. No, the one that's on the top of the hill. The one that I showed you
Shiloh.
that they ended up building it.
Shiloh is the first
Yeah,
one. Yes.
yeah. So he was really, like real negative about it, because you got to go before the city council and he's there and all that, and I didn't like his vibe, and they were questioning who we were, professional people who we were getting to be a part of it, and they were recommending their people. We was like, no, we get, you don't tell us who to get.
I hear you.
And so I never felt them, I never felt them after that, because here you're trying to dictate to people of a church, one of the oldest churches around, who they need to get with contracts, and I never liked them after that. So, and I'm straightforward with it.
No, I hear you.
And people.
You were asking like before, why'd I get involved? And I guess there's 2 of the main stores. Well, 3 stores, but one was there was a 80-year-old woman about 8 months ago that I happened to be in the clerk's office, and she said she needed to get her mortgage satisfied so the county clerk would hit it. Well, everything there is like they're trying to bring it up to speed. But it was on a computer, and she didn't know how the computer, and the clerk said to her, "Sorry, you have to use the computer." To me, I go back to the old-fashioned way. We're going to have 1 or 2 clerks sitting up front, and they're going to be saying, "Hello, how are you?" Because I'm not going to sit in the office. I'm going to sit in the front with them, and we're going to start helping people.
Right.
I want to take this office and spread it out and let them know. He's got this mobile van that he sends out, and he's very proud to say he sent it out once to every single town. I don't know if he did, but once in Yonkers, once in New Rochelle, once in Mount Vernon. Who's that helping?
Right.
It's got to be
Right.
5-6 times. It's got to be
Right.
spread around.
Right.
Another thing was, Second Amendment firearms. I don't like bringing it up now with everything, but I mean, he in essence was foiled, and what the LOHUD asked for was all the license, the bona fide licenses, addresses, and where they live. That was put up on an interactive map. Well, I'm going to tell you something. There's undercover narcotics. Well, I don't have to tell you. Right. Undercover narcotics officers, other kind of officers in organized crime, but battered women that were in shelters. These addresses were given out. If I'm elected, I will not give out any sensitive information. Big Brother and all that's there. Fella from LOHUD called me about 2 months ago. He says, "Well, you'd be breaking the law." I go, "Well, then."
How did you break? I mean, I could see you putting the people's names out that are registered, but to put their addresses out, I don't.
Nope, not the addresses. I
don't agree with that either.
I mean, it's just you're putting people in harm's way. All of Westchester County.
Right.
Man,
yeah, absolutely right.
That's the main thing that was the
and
stimulus.
and LOHUD was going to publish all these people addresses.
Well, they did, and had to take it down 3 days later, and the publisher had to get an armed guard for her home and her house. I mean, common sense.
Yeah.
Common sense.
Right. Yeah, someone else is looking at an ass whipping for publishing people's addresses on social media.
Sounds like a Mount
yeah,
Vernon thing.
Yeah, it's coming.
Enough's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's coming, but you don't do things like that. I mean, you really don't do things like that.
Privacy.
Yes, privacy is definitely important, and
Now,
that
you
person
said,
will realize
be
it.
clear. So you're saying they want to? You said people that are they want to release everybody's email addresses, or was it specific?
No, they
Addresses.
Addresses. They
Name
did
and
it.
addresses
They
of
did
where they
release
live.
them.
They did it.
Okay, of who?
Every
Every
registered
single
gun
gun
owner
owner.
in
Oh,
Westchester.
every gun owner.
Every gun owner, their address.
Oh, okay.
Now the people are saying, do I rob this house or I not rob that house? Do I wait till they go away? Do I go steal their safe? Now I know where the cop that busted me is. It just goes on and on and on. Just bad judgment, and I just don't want anything else going out.
I think there's public information when it comes to like police officers, and that's what he's talking about. His wife's a police officer, detective. Who's put away a lot of dangerous criminals, felons, some killers and stuff.
Absolutely.
You don't want them or their friends and family knowing where you live.
That's his point.
You understand what I'm saying?
That's his point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then you got people who are, let's just say, has some kind of domestic violence and has moved or something. Now you're giving the person who's right where they're at. Like there's a lot of so there should be some stipulations in that, like of what there should be some things that this is off limits. This is off limits.
I
this
agree.
is off
Right now you
limits.
could opt out, but I mean I would just have a roll of forms opt out. If you want to opt in, go ahead. But if not, we're not going to publish your name.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, I like that. So what have you? So you said you've been in politics for a while. What have you done?
Your
give us
resume.
I guess resume right now. I'm chairman of the board of the Westchester County Parks and Recreation. So, we meet once a month, and that's all the golf courses, the county center, playland, all the different parks, the pools, and so forth. I was also headed up the
I need to
Play
send you
Lake
my
division.
business card for advertising. They need advertising from all them places.
There you
Let's go ahead, but you'll find no promises.
Yeah.
No promises. I knew you locked the door for
Well,
somebody.
Playland. Whoa, yes.
You might be able to point me in the right direction.
We've been losing $4 million a year. We got to do something there.
Oh wow.
$4 million.
Nobody's going up there.
There's a lawsuit against Rye, and now that's passed. And the
So
judge
was it
favored-
privatized or something, or it was?
It's going to be privatized, where people are going to come in, give us money, fix the place up, and on a monthly basis give it to us. But it's still a park, and we'll always own it.
Okay.
I mean, the privatization works in some cases. In some cases, it don't. I'm just, like, I work at the jail. The privatized medical services sucks. But to privatize a park unless somebody else run it, I don't see what's wrong with that. But people will argue that a privatization company will come in and then pay less wages to the people than what the wages that people are being paid because they work for the county. And we understand that it is a business, it is a business, and the business is to make money. And a lot of times how they work that out is on the wages of the people. But we have to, I think it's a balance act, how you would work it out to make sure that people actually get good living wages, that they're able to live in Westchester. I think that's the most biggest argument, is that people don't have living wages.
I agree, and I think we covered that by every single employee that's there under the county will be there under the same salary and going into a privatized where you can get incentives and other things.
Right.
So they will be protected. Absolutely. First thing we looked at.
Now, what if someone was working at there, like, for 15 years, right? And if they're county workers, they're invested in the state retirement system.
Okay.
Now, what happens to that money? If they go privatize and then they have to work for a privatized company, right? What happens to the 15 years that they have put in? And let's say they got 5 years to go, to get a decent pension. Now, what happens to that employee if they become privatized? What happens to his credit, or what does he do with that 15-year credit in the New York State retirement system?
That's a good point. Most of the jobs we're talking about are all part-time.
Okay.
So they're not involved in that. And the
I just have to
handful
ask.
of other. No, that's
Yeah,
great. So
yeah.
just looking out for the people.
Right.
Absolutely. All the people.
Right. Yeah, we have to. We have to. And county jobs are good jobs. you know, and a lot of people, look, 5,000 people took the last test for correction, you know.
Wow.
Right, yeah, and they only hire, and you only actually have an academy of 40 a clip. So, you know, people are looking for a lot of municipality jobs, you know, and the county jobs. I mean, the correction job is a good job. You know, I really feel sorry for the last tier because their overtime is not included into into their overall pension, you know, and I think that's going to cause a problem with New York 20 to 25 years down, because if you're making 100,000, but you're making 160, 170,000 with overtime, and that's not added into your pension, and you've been working 25 years, right? You buy a house, you buy all this stuff off your regular salary. Now you're gonna go to half. So you're going from 100,000 to 50,000. You're not going to be able to afford those taxes in that house. You're not going to be able to afford the upkeep of the house or your child, and you're going to have to sell that house and go down south, where that 50,000 is going to
mean something.
I think New York is going to come into a crisis within the next 25 years. The way they did these retirement tiers, nobody is, you know, like, even I know people that overtime was added to their pension because they were tier 1, 2, or 3, and they're leaving down south. So I know these guys now that don't have overtime in their pension, they're going to be messed up when they decide to retire, because they're not going to have enough money to upkeep anything.
By the way, you're talking to one. I'm a tier 6. Board of Elections, tier 6.
Tier 6. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 years in, so still 4 in and out. I'm not going to wait to, milk the job for the pension or anything. Nope, not me.
So anybody looking at you for the first time want to contribute to your campaign, want to know more about you, how do they get in touch with you, social media, website, anything like that?
We have, multiple pages and stuff. Jim4clerk.com. Jim4clerk.com. And all the information's on here on the Twitter page, the Instagram page, the everything else. Twitter, I don't go crazy. There's a fella in Washington seems to coin the whole Twitter thing, so I just take it easy and just make it real.
Yeah. He didn't took a. He didn't.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You got it.
I'm not often lost for words. I'm just like.
That's nice.
Which is a first.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Couple quick shout outs, real quick. Joe Dove. Omi Medina said thank you to Black Westchester, Lorraine and AJ. Nancy Sexton King is watching. Floyd Myers says what's up. He's tuned in. Tasha, Honey D, what is her last name? The one from Greenberg. They're setting it up, Damien. What's her last name?
Tasha.
Okay, Tasha. her Facebook is Tasha Honey D. But she said, hey, people before politics. John R. Jones said he's in the house. Oscar Davis. Kathleen Romero, Walia, the one running for controller in City Council. She wants me to remind everybody that there's a City Council debate tomorrow at 7 o'clock at the Bronxville Fieldhouse. And Tasha says, sometimes privatization works. If the county engages with private companies, will they please allot an amount of jobs for people with disabilities, Black and Latino, like 15% or 15% for, and 15% for? Does that mean that makes sense to you?
I think it does to some degree. Let's just say I would like to hit those figures over at the clerk's office. I don't know about Playland, but let's take it over the clerk's office.
Okay. Rashad, shout to Rashad. Rashad, you got to come back on the show. Need a new article from you for Black Westchester. Omi has already said. Be More Wise and April Barnett. Thank you, everybody, for tuned in. And Jeff Ford from Strong Island, chilling in. Anything I didn't ask you that you want people to know about you or why they should vote for you?
What you see is what you get. You know what I've told you here. I've been out for the last 8 months doing what I call retail marketing or retail campaigning. Been going door to door, train stations Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Been going all kinds of events. Today I was at a parade. I was at the dam had a veterans, which is one, if I may now, and I always do, and I forgot to, but to put a shout out to the veterans. I just have more respect for them. So whoever served, on behalf of myself and the family
got one
and
right
Black
next-
Westchester,
got one right next
thank
to
you
you.
very much.
You got a
Well,
veteran
you know,
right
thank
next
you
to
for
you.
your service. I mean that, and it's just something I learned through the family, and just want to respect that. But I just want to be the candidate for everybody. I want to open up the county clerk's office, make it a friendlier environment. I have a very close rapport with the union. I have a very close rapport with the Democrats and the county legislator. I think I'm the guy that can do it, and I think I can make Westchester County Clerk proud.
And now, when you leave, you can go back and tell your fellow Republicans that people for politics is safe, and they can come on the show anytime. Because they're scared to come on the show.
listen.
You mean I can take this body armor off?
Let me
I
tell
can't
you,
move.
Doc Cavallo is the only chair that has come on the show. Twice.
Campaign.
No,
champ. I
how
mean,
many times? Three?
At least 3 times.
Yeah, at least 3 times. He's the only chair. We've sent invitations to Reggie Lafayette,
Doug Colty,
Doug Colty.
and a couple of the city chairs, and they didn't.
Right.
Showed
As a matter of fact, at Doc's last party, took a picture with Doug Colty. He was wondering where the picture was going to end up.
He said,
I'm
"There's
like,
nothing." He said, "Nothing good. Nothing good could come from this picture."
That's funny. That's funny.
But hey, listen,
I'm
man.
very close to Doug.
Well,
so I
tell
gotta talk to
Doug,
him. He's got to
bring
come
his
over
ass,
here.
bring his ass, because a lot of people want to
will.
know what the hell's going on in Mount Vernon, man, with your Republican candidate. I mean, listen,
Yeah,
we
that's
just want to
true.
know. We
I
just
hear
like,
ya.
I mean, they're sucker punching and they're speaking, and then the pastor that's throwing the press conference supporting them is recorded saying he's not supporting them. What is going on in Mount Vernon, Doug? And that's all we want to know. So tell him he's welcome. Come on, man. Tell him
Just tell him it's
anytime.
Politics over people.
That's right. No,
okay.
people over
before
politics.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he'll have fun.
But you can tell him you survived.
Yeah,
you
you
came,
survived.
you
Well,
came,
I'm
you
not-
saw,
I'm
you
not out
conquered.
yet.
Yeah.
They hear the voices again? One more time over there.
Yeah, you know.
Well, we'd like to thank you for coming. We got a really, really crazy show. We have a judge about to come in now.
Yeah. Judge Oliver.
Judge Oliver, and I'll let Damon introduce
thank
her.
you.
And one more time, the website is, the website is.
Oh.
forclerk.com.
Okay, there you go. There
All
you
right,
go.
all
There you
right, Jim.
All right, thank you, everybody. Just come out and vote.
That's it.
Just come out and vote, and just vote for who you want to. Hopefully it's me, but just come out and vote.
You got, I already told you, you got my vote, man.
Thank you.
go. Absolutely, absolutely.
Independence line. I'm clicking
Absolutely,
independent.
absolutely.
I'm an independent guy.
Yeah, shout out to Frank, Uncle Frank's in the check-in, Gwen, Nix, James.
Hey. What's happening?
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, Tasha D. Young. She told me what the whole name was. She was,
All right. What's
we
happening?
sure will. She was responding to you, Damon.
Okay, all right.
A little late. She was responding to you. She said, we sure will.
Whenever she's ready.
So while we got a few minutes, so this has been a very busy week.
Mount Vernon.
Just period, yeah. So all you have to do is check the cover of Black Westchester. As Damon alluded to, we have Bishop, who was the former president of the United Clergy, United Black
Hey,
Clergy.
let's play that, man. Yo, let's play that. Let's play that.
Oh, okay, we got a few minutes.
Yeah, we got
That's
a few
the
minutes.
guy that called in here a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
right, David?
Yeah.
That he said he was with you all and everything.
Yeah, that was him.
All right.
I mean, let's play that. Please.
So I wrote a big editorial. It's Real Talk with A.J. Woodson. Bishop Edwards makes fun of Senator Latimer's eye on Facebook, and then has the nerve to laugh about it, which really troubled me overall. It's the, what he said was out of line for a man of God, for a pastor. Not supposed to put nobody on a pedestal, but for someone who's very judgmental against others, and then to have this kind of a situation was definitely uncalled for. So we're going to play. So basically, he wrote on Facebook. He said he was responding because I think Damon that was talking about pastors or something, about pastors selling their soul or something.
Wait, hold on. I'm gonna go right to the post. So we're
I have
gonna
the video queued up already.
Yeah, we're gonna set up the story here. I made a post on my Facebook page, and I and basically it says, has anybody seen this man? And I was literally talking about Reggie Lafayette because of the fact that as Democratic chair and city committee chair of Mount Vernon, he needs to be more visible.
Yeah, when he was little, we used to play a game. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Where in the world is Reggie? Like you had to find out where he is all the time.
So, I mean,
where's Waldo?
I mean, in the comments, so in the comments section, he made I gotta find it. Oh, here we go. So in the comment and in my thing, I talked about, us having some of these pastors that are selling their soul, selling their soul to Robert Astorino. And so he responded. He responded on my thread that he says, black preachers selling our souls, shameful. He says, what do you about cross-eyed George? But he spelled George wrong, right? He spelled it wrong. So I didn't know what he was talking about because he spelled it. Didn't read George. He spelled it George.
You can't even blame that on Mount Vernon. He's not a
right.
He go to Mount Vernon schools.
So I asked the question: what is a cross-eyed Georage? Like what is that? So Jahi Hansen, Reggie Lafayette's son, says he's talking about George Latimer's eye.
That's so wrong.
Right. So we went in and we scolded him online. But then we were sent this recording from the legendary community activist Samuel Rivers. And this is how
Samuel L. Rivers.
Samuel L. Rivers, I'm sorry. And this is how it goes.
You made a comment saying he was cross-eyed. I mean, but you're. I mean, he is.
Okay, so why ain't that nothing wrong?
No, but they said you was. Well, I didn't read the post. Someone just called me and they said he just called George Latimer cross-eyed. That's what they're talking about. Because I didn't know what they were saying.
Wait a minute. But other than that, is he cross-eyed?
I mean, yeah, it looks like he has a lazy eye. No, I mean.
That was basically that was the.
Sounds like he was dipping in the wine.
You know what, Samuel? You know what? And to be
that's a good one.
To be real too. I'm sorry, I forgot to switch screens. To be real, I know he was laughing, but he ain't sound like the most articulate, educated individual in that situation at all. I mean, so I wrote, I went and talked about it in my column, and I'm like, this is 24 hours after standing with endorsing the county executive, Rob Astorino, in front of his church right there. And like I said, he was responding to the criticism. Now I know, and I wrote this, now he has the right to support who he wants. But when he does, he should be man enough to take the criticism that comes along with it. What I do not expect to see is on Facebook publicly making fun of an elected official who was running against the candidate that he endorsed. We all say things in anger, and maybe he didn't stop and think what he wrote. I can give him that. But that would have been more acceptable or more believable if he hadn't got caught laughing about the statement on the phone when he asked about it. And you just heard that conversation for yourself. And this is my words to him. My brother, I call you out because you are a hypocrite. You preach the word of Jesus, then publicly do the opposite. I've had long conversations with you, and you were quick to criticize others, especially for presenting public negative statements about others, and then you pull this. You have shown yourself to be the reason why many people run from the church because of hypocritical pastors like yourself who preach one thing and do another. Do as I say, not as I do, does not apply to ministry. And since you're so quick to in so many conversations to talk about what the Bible says, I was able to find several Bible verses that address making fun of others. There's a lot of them. The Bible does tell us not to judge one another, so I tried to keep that in mind as I was writing this. But I would have been remiss if I didn't say anything so that my silence didn't come off as approval, because I do not approve of your actions. And Damon's always said, and his mom always told him, if someone errors in public, they should be corrected in public.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So, I was just left wondering, for your large congregation, do they approve of these kind of comments?
What is he going to say? An eye for an eye?
For the county exec who proudly stood with you 24 hours earlier, does he accepted your endorsement? Does he agree with your point of view and and approve of your actions?
I doubt it very much.
And I would like to hear him say that. You know what I'm saying? And to the preschool that receives money, your preschool that receives money from the city or the county, do those who you receive the money from, do they approve of this? Do the parents of the children who attend your preschool, do they approve? Does the church community view your actions as favorable? What about the United Black Clergy who look to you as their president? You know what I'm saying? I think you owe the senator, the Democratic Party, the public, your congregation, anybody who's ever looked up to you for guidance, a public apology. And that's my words on the whole thing. He has tried to call me earlier today. I was busy.
He should also apologize to the Republicans for making, come on now.
No, he only needs, Astorino needs to apologize for the Republicans.
No, Astorino needs to disavow
him.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, no, Astorino needs to condemn the statement.
That's what I mean, yes.
He needs to condemn the statement, right? And he needs to condemn the actions of his city council candidate before his ass go out in cuffs before the election. So it is what it is, but they have some condemning to do in their party. The cuffs is coming. It's not over. I'm telling you, the cuffs is coming.
So earlier in the week, Councilman Andre Wallace had a press conference, and afterwards, the mayor decided to show up and got heckled.
Let's bring our guest. Is our guest?
I was waiting for them to come in.
Can you get him?
Yeah, and was heckled by the community.
Yeah, we don't even need to play that.
Oh, we don't play that?
Nah,
Okay.
I don't even need to go into all that.
Okay. I was killing time for the get. They ready?
I was going to get them outside.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't even need to get into that. We don't need to get into that.
So also,
because it's.
So you need an apology from the bishop.
Well, I just want to see, you know what? Everybody makes a mistake. Everybody's falls short of the glory of God and all that good stuff. But if you're gonna come out like that, there's just no excuse. And then you on Facebook today talking about liars and haters. Who are the liars and the haters? These were your words on Facebook. That was your voice on the tape. So who are the liars and the haters?
I mean, people do make statements, but this one is totally inappropriate.
Everybody in the studio was cringing the whole time it was playing. Oh my God, just hearing it again real loud. You know what I'm saying?
It's pretty disgusting.
It's
Shame on you, Bishop.
Yeah, and you consider yourself a moral
look,
authority.
Look. Let me say something, man.
Yeah, Damon, stop talking about black preachers. That's what he
This
tells
is
me.
not personal.
That's what he says every time we see him.
Well, look, everybody get mad. Come on in. People. Who left?
Okay, so
So
moving
who's
on.
out there?
So she left when the other candidate left.
Jim introduced himself to one of the.
Okay.
What was the? Wait, was the judge out there?
Yeah, she was there. Yeah.
So why didn't he come in?
Crystal came in and I said, bring her in. And she said, we'll be. When she left, she walked out. We told him to come in.
I think I tried to call. I think they want to come back, but the light in the bathroom is out. I don't know.
Okay, so moving on. We got live radio. So how have you been, Lorraine, who has a birthday coming up in 4 days?
27.
27.
I'm so excited.
27. She's going to be the big 27, David.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have any plans for your 27th birthday there, Lorraine?
No, what you gonna do with me, AJ?
I don't know.
You want me to just sit down?
Yes. Come on in.
That's your bag, right? Yeah, sure.
Come on in.
You could. You know what? While we're waiting, can you do a quick update on Omi?
So I think you know more information than I do. So the Omi Medina situation where I think he is close to. Section 8 had reached out to him. Section 8 reached out to him. Go ahead, you know more.
Section 8 reached out to them and they said, say hello to AJ Woodson. So they know more about you than they know about me.
That's interesting, though.
He's going for his fingerprints on Wednesday.
Now, for those that don't know, that's a good thing?
That's a good thing. That's MHA housing.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get it, to move into one of the apartments or to qualify, you have to get fingerprinted, and they do a background check on everything. But it seems like things are moving. And we got to thank Mayor Spano and his family for reaching out to them and constantly, going over to the house. And I know that
bringing trays of food.
Bringing trays of food, gift cards, Galata House, Jeremy, Jeffrey. Eastchester police officer also reached out to him. A retired police officer also reached out. A couple of pastors have reached out to them, and because of the show, because they're listening and they're hearing what's going on, and things are moving forward, AJ. And I just want to thank you on behalf of the family, because I don't think none of this would have happened. I mean, there's no way none of this would have happened if you wouldn't have gotten involved. And I'll tell you one thing. Another thing, it wouldn't have happened if the mayor had not got involved, because all it had to do was, which I constantly kept saying, it takes a phone call for the mayor to get things rolling, and
I think when we went to that contingency service thing, we was
constituent services.
We was a little too close to the mayor. We was getting close to the mayor. Like, take care of him before he start calling me. Yeah. Well, I just want to say one thing on that. Shout. I'm happy for what's going on with Omi Medina, but listen, my take on all of this, I appreciate that he's being fed. I appreciate that the paperwork's moving. I appreciate that. But until that man and his family are in an apartment, I don't want to hear. I'm glad that y'all are filling me in, and I'm glad that y'all are updating me, and I greatly appreciate that because y'all save me a lot of phone calls. But
they got to keep it
rolling.
Keep
The ultimate
goal
is to get them into a first floor apartment or an apartment with an apartment building with an elevator. For his quality of life for him and his family, and that is the goal. And until that actually happens, y'all are not gonna get me off of y'all. So y'all are gonna continue to hear my mouth.
But you got the ball rolling. You got things are moving. Things are moving, and things are moving quickly for them.
Well, I'm happy about that, and shout to them. And
they were originally told that there was a waiting list for 5 years, but
yeah.
I think in less than 5 months they'll have a home.
Well, that's good. That's good.
So I just want to say before we get into the segment, Maureen Walker is now posting the invoices of Spezio's purchase of a Chevrolet truck with lights on it, which is illegal because he's not a law enforcement officer. The city purchased him a truck.
Oh, that was for him?
Yeah.
Ooh.
She says options and invoice for $70,000 luxury SUV purchased by Spezio for his personal use with the Mount Vernon taxpayers' money. Can you talk corruption?
Which suggests that the mayor actually, because this is the background for the mayor's decision to
pay a visit to the bank that the city uses,
Right.
and request access to something, whatever that something may be.
So maybe this restraining order that he's bragging about to make Maureen write checks is to buy Spezio a personal truck. I mean, she's posting the invoices.
But wouldn't that be for a full-time employee?
Oh. You don't say. You don't say. What you don't say. It should be for actual police commissioner or deputy
You got
police commissioner.
upgraded to a Suburban. I'm looking at the package here. Luxury package, RD, 4 wheels, sun and entertainment package, all weather, cargo weather.
Which one is that? That's the
cruiser division. The letter below that, 2 below that. We'll put it up on the screen.
All right. Yeah, but you're talking about the cruiser division. Yeah. But also look, it says Motorola radio antenna.
Yeah.
Right? This is real police shit here.
And split kit. Yeah.
Yeah, split kit.
Thought the Motorola walkie-talkies were not working. I thought they would. They said they were.
The radio, you got. I don't know. David might know more about. I don't know what's going on with the police department and their equipment. She said the mayor had put something out that the walkie-talkies are decades old and they don't work, and
they don't have the parts for them anymore. Motorola doesn't even have parts for them anymore.
I don't know. We had to find out. You need to ask them more.
You know what? I'm really not going to get into it. At the end of the day, the feds need to come in and take over the police department and let the feds work out everything.
So 70,000.
I mean, it's no other option. The feds need to come in and let them work out everything.
$70,786 for a luxury SUV purchased by Spezio for personal use, not for business, for personal use, with taxpayers.
Right.
money.
So they made Maureen write a check, and Spezio is on the receipt, not the city of Mount Vernon.
I can only hope for Mayor Thomas that he did not make such a ill-advised decision.
The receipts ain't lying. I mean, she got one, she got two receipts up here. She has the invoice. John Vance Chevrolet. But then she has another invoice from the cruiser division.
Right, that's what I was reading.
This is the stuff they probably added to it.
Mount Vernon, yeah, that's what I was saying.
To make it police-like.
Did they get the truck?
Yeah,
it's paid for.
It's paid for. She says options invoice luxury SUV purchased by Spezio for personal use with Mount Vernon taxpayers' money. This is the controller saying it. Joseph Spezio buys $70,000 SUV for personal use with taxpayers' money.
Billed to City of Mount Vernon.
Yeah.
1 Roosevelt Square. Shipped to City of Mount Vernon, 1 Roosevelt Square. Yeah. But this is supposedly for him for his personal use. So I always say, you need to ask those questions and you need to look into everything. Everybody watching the show needs to go to City Hall and ask those questions. They need to foil for the information. You know, a lot of times you hear when we put out truth and we put out evidence, it's fake news. Oh, they just have an agenda. You, the people, are the power. Go to City Hall and exercise your rights. This is information you have the right to know. So go to City Hall, do your job as the residents and the voters, and go look this stuff up for yourself. We already showed you where it is.
Or maybe, since there's a debate, right, someone needs to ask the new people running for controller, is this legal?
Well, she's on the... how do you pronounce her name? Walea?
Yeah.
Walida. She's already on the check-in. If you are still listening, call in 718-705-4959.
Let's get with our guests.
Okay.
Let's get with our guests. I just wanted to read that out so people, we don't need them to call in. They need to answer that. at the debate, and hopefully anyone that goes to debate will bring it up to the people that's running for controller, because one of them will be controller in January, and they should be empowered with some type of powers through the city charter to review the purchases, do an audit, and call the AG's office if it's illegal. I mean, it's the same as that. And I hope Maureen, if she's listening, will do the same now, is call the damn AG's office or the controller's office. There has to be some type of oversight. I really don't understand how one man can run roughshod through a city and there's no accountability. There's no accountability in the police department. There's no accountability from the DA's office, from the AG's office, from the U.S. Attorney's office. There's no accountability anywhere. And this has been going on for 2 years. So I really don't know what's going on. Or maybe just because it's a black city, nobody gives a fuck. So let the black people be abused and be lawlessness, because this wouldn't happen in Scarsdale. I'm from White Plains. I know damn well this wouldn't happen in White Plains or Greenberg or any area from that. But I mean, they've been allowing this to go on for too damn long, and it's blatant abuse of power and abuse of people. And nobody's doing nothing.
And that's actually a great segue into our next guest, Alex S. Vitale. Did I pronounce it right?
Yeah, that's right.
Who has a book called The End of Policing, how the police
in Mount Vernon.
Us.
No.
Well, I mean, this is a very appropriate for
right,
the
right,
subject. How the police endanger us and why we need to find an alternative. Please explain a little bit about the book, why you wrote the book, and
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me on, everybody, and really glad to have a chance to talk about this. The book just came out this week, so very excited about that. It's something that was in the works for about 4 years. I started working on it actually before the tragic events in Ferguson, before Eric Garner, but I put it on hold for a couple of years because I felt like I needed to be part of the conversations that were happening right then when there was so much attention. I didn't know at the time that the issue would remain so powerfully in the public eye, because of course there's nothing new about police misconduct. There's nothing new about the police killing people. What's new is the level of resistance, the level of anger, and the kind of sustained organizing that's been happening. Often when we see a tragic incident like Amadou Diallo, there will be a big upsurge in protest activity. Maybe someone will get indicted, but no real movement develops. It just kind of washes away. No organizations form, no resources are directed at trying to do something for the long run. So my hope is that this book will be a tool that can be used by folks who see the problems in policing and are trying to figure out what a solution looks like. And maybe they've thought about things like, well, we need to indict some police officers, we need some more community-oriented policing, we need body cameras, but beginning to get the sense that maybe that's not going to be enough. That these things are not really providing the kind of relief we were hoping for, that police are not going to get indicted, that body cameras are being used more for police PR than they are for holding the police accountable, that community policing just puts more police in the community, gives them more responsibilities, gets them to treat more problems as police problems rather than real community problems that could be solved in other ways. So that's the hope.
Right. Well, let me say, Alex, it's an especial pleasure to have you on the show. Most of our audience doesn't know this, but you and I are fellow alums of the City University Graduate Center program in sociology, and we've had a long friendship and affiliation that not only includes our shared scholarly interests, but also our social interest in social justice. I should say that you have been long involved in social justice movements here in New York City. We initially began to collaborate together as fellow student organizers in the CUNY protest movement in the late 1990s. but since then,
Been a while.
Been a while. And since then, you've continued in the tradition of the scholar activist through both your research on policing. I should mention that this is your second book on policing. You do have a more academically oriented book on policing that is a continuation of your dissertation research into the rise of quality of life policing, starting in New York. I remember when we were confronting the Giuliani administration together, and I remember your keen interest and involvement in trying to help us to navigate interactions with the police in order to make sure our protests could come off as peacefully and as constructively as possible. And the title of your book, your first book, is City of Disorder: How the Quality of Life Campaign Transformed New York City, New York Politics. And it's especially timely that you should join us here on the show today, because as you can tell from the discussion that you've been privy to, we are struggling with a lot of issues regarding both policing policy in the city, as we look to try to, hit upon a new direction for the city, but also in terms of, providing citizen checks and balances on the administration and some of the personnel choices. So I really do. I can't tell you how much of a pleasure it is to have you come in to speak with us today. And to kind of start things off, the title of your book is The End of Policing. You do have a critical take on the institution of policing, and your central claim is that much of the reform efforts that have been undertaken to date, and some even mentioned here in our discussion, including outside federal intervention when police departments do not function according to the community's needs, are essentially misguided and will continue to prove to be ineffective. And in many respects, you say this is because we don't have a full appreciation of the historical role of police. And I thought maybe that's an appropriate starting point for our discussion about the limits of police reform and why we need to really rethink entirely the role that police now have in, our society today.
Well, I sometimes think about it this way. There's kind of two stories. There's an old story that's hundreds of years old that about the nature of policing, and that's a story about slave patrols, about colonialism, about the suppression of the industrial working class in the 19th century. And then there's a more recent part of the story that's only decades old, and it's about the war on drugs, the rise of this war on crime mentality, the war on disorder, broken windows policing, the war on terror, which has become a big, and all of these have led to the dramatic expansion of what was already a problematic institution. So what I say is that it's important to understand policing as fundamentally the most sort of coercive and punitive aspect of local government. What distinguishes the police from other parts of government is that they're who you call when you need somebody to put hands on someone.
Right, unless you're Damon Jones. Or somebody else.
That's you think about the tools they have. They're tools of physical force, and that's why I don't sometimes like a lot of discussions about police brutality, because that's why we called them, was because they're there to use force, and sometimes that's necessary. We need to be protected from someone, and so sometimes we see something on the news that looks violent, but may not actually be inappropriate in that circumstance. So we talk about
such
things.
as?
Well, so for instance, if someone is having a fight with someone and the police show up and the fight escalates and maybe they're drunk or something, the officer is trying to protect someone and is trying to intervene in that situation, and if the person who's maybe started the fight then starts fighting with the officer, that officer's going to need to use force to protect the victim in the fight, to protect themselves. And that could get bloody, it could get very ugly, and it could even escalate to someone's death if the person is armed, pulls out a knife during the fight. And while it's brutal and gruesome to see, it's not illegal, and it may not be inappropriate.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's why when I hear a lot of just loose talk about police brutality, I sometimes feel like that's not helpful.
Well, I think it's not the fact that police, if they do their job, it's the fact of the lack of accountability of those who do violate policies and procedures and training.
Yeah, so that's a central issue in this conversation. Right. But what I would say is, if you look at so many of the horrible outcomes that we've seen in the last few years, how many of them involve cases where really the police should never have been there in the first place?
Well, some cases, the police put themselves in that situation.
That's right. How many of them were because they were just out looking for somebody?
Right.
Because they are trying to imagine they're going to stop drugs by arresting a lot of
or
people
quotas
for
or whatever
right,
necessary.
or they're searching for something on a pretextual traffic stop, or they're dealing with a mentally ill person,
right,
who should be getting some kind of adequate mental health treatment, who should, the mom calls and says, my son needs help, and instead of a medical professional, they send armed police who then kill him.
Right.
So my point is that there's only so much we can achieve on accountability in this environment. I'm not very optimistic, frankly. And I don't think there's a ton we can achieve in terms of training. I think instead what we need to do is we need to ask, why has every problem in our society been turned over to the police to solve? And Mike Brown, who was, David Brown, who was the chief of police in Dallas after those officers were killed, he made a statement to the press a little while after that, and he said, the city of Dallas has asked us to do too much. The schools don't work. They want us to be in there in the schools and fix all the problems in the schools. We got a loose dog problem. They want us to fix the loose dog problem. We got mental health problems. They want us to fix that problem. He's like, it's too much. We can't do all those things. Those things are often require completely opposite kinds of training and equipment, and police aren't in a position to make those judgments out on the street in a split second. It just leads to alienation of the community towards the police, and there are alternatives.
Well, I have to disagree. Police. I'm a correction officer. I carry no guns, and I defuse situations. I'm in a housing area with 60 inmates by myself. I'm able to defuse situations. I don't understand the mentality, and my wife is a detective, and we talk all the time. The mentality of the police officer, mentality of the correction officer is totally different. So, they can diffuse situations. We deal with mentally ill all the time. Unfortunately, they're not trained to deal with mentally ill, and I think it goes back to policies and the proper leadership and the culture of policing on how the culture is. I mean, it doesn't need more. It doesn't need reforming. It really needs to be broken down and rebuilt, because of the fact that we have a warrior cop mentality that is not like officer friendly used to be when we were 5 and 6 years old, right? Officer friendly doesn't exist anymore, and they're not. And police officers are not problem solvers anymore in the community. They're looked at as an occupying force, and I think we have to change the mentality of the cop and the mentality of the actual police culture that is there, because you have police management that are like big boys with toys, and you have also police management that actually push cops to do certain things. Now, if we change the mentality, and when we're talking about community policing, I know one of the creators of community policing before it was what we see now at the police called Jimmy Bell from Jackson State University, is one of the originators of what community policing was about. But it wasn't about community policing from the police perspective. It was community policing, having the community take control of how they want their community to be policed, as far as who's being hired, as far as the policies, how the policies affect. And then there's another problem is we don't see these issues in white communities. You know, something has to happen because we only see these issues in black communities. So black communities are policed totally different than white communities. So we know they can do it because they do it in Scarsdale, right? They do it in the white neighborhoods. But when it comes to black neighborhoods, it's a totally different philosophy and how they deal with policing. So we know they could do it. We know they could be officer friendly. We know they don't have to have the warrior cop mentality because they don't do it in the rich neighborhoods or the white neighborhoods. They only have these mentalities and they only use these policies when it comes to black areas.
Well, there's a lot to respond to there. First of all, I'm afraid I'm much more pessimistic about this than you are, which is that when we talk about police accountability, and I think one of the major things that's missing in our discussions about police accountability is political accountability.
Oh, that too. Oh, no, yeah.
Because the police did not invent the war on drugs.
That's right.
The police did not invent broken windows policing. These were political priorities that were imposed upon them. And so when we tell the police, when our political leadership tells the police to wage a war on drugs, a war on crime, a war on disorder, a war on terror, you cannot have officer friendly. These things are not possible because people resent it and resist, and the police escalate in response to that, which is understandable, but look at the Eric Garner thing. Why were police sent, and not just one, a squad? There were 3 sergeants on the scene, undercover uniform, right, to get a guy alleged to engage in a tax violation.
But that's
no. They wasn't there for that.
That day
it was
is not
a
what
fight.
happened.
He broke up
there
a
was
fight.
a fight between 2 kids that day.
No.
Yes.
The chief Banks, the chief of department, has admitted that he was directly involved in assigning officers to go out there because there had been complaints about the selling of untaxed cigarettes.
And that's true.
And we're not saying that.
We're not saying
that.
That day.
I
he hadn't sold any cigarettes.
I understand
there was
about
a
the
fight.
fight.
There was a fight
the
that he just broke up.
But the police should never have been assigned to deal with that issue. That should have been a civil matter.
Right, I do.
I
mean, your larger point is that there are economic imperatives that are driving people to engage in illicit activities that business owners resent and in turn look to end by calling mayors up and telling them bring out the police.
Wait, he did have a history of selling loosies.
Absolutely.
We know that, but that day, that specific day, it was a fight, and they confronted him after the fight.
I understand, but that's not why they were there.
True.
And my biggest thing with that, I don't care if he did everything else that he did and 10 times more. Ain't none of what he did was worthy of a death sentence.
Of course,
you know what I'm saying? Like he never was tried and arrested and tried in court. You know what I'm saying? He was just taken out.
But hold on, because I want to be faithful to Alex's book. The point that Alex is making is that police are being thrust into a situation where they're not being asked to simply deal with acts of criminality and threats to public safety, but rather they're also being asked to address fundamental questions of economic inequality, lack of employment, that drives large numbers of people to engage in illicit activity that our political system deems must be solved with the tools of policing as opposed to, for example, economic redevelopment.
And this is where the issue of the racial difference comes in. First of all, if you're in a white, poor, rural community in the United States, you experience a lot of really bad policing too.
Right. You do.
That's for sure. We don't see it here in the New York area as much because poverty is so racialized here.
You're absolutely right.
Not to say that race isn't a factor, but also, so in Scarsdale, they don't have widespread youth unemployment. They have community resources. And also, the police have been told not to wage a war on drugs, not to wage a war on disorder. They have depoliced in many regards. Most people
And that's
in
where
those
all the drugs are.
That's absolutely true.
That's
That's
where
all,
they coming from.
that's all
and
the
the
drugs
profits,
are.
and
Right.
the profits
That's
from
right.
it.
That's
so the money laundering and
Right.
that goes
Right.
on, absolutely. So, but they've been told, the police, that they have a different mission in those communities, a mission that looks a lot more like what I'm
Absolutely.
saying,
Absolutely.
which is these are not police issues. If a young person in Scarsdale has a heroin problem, that's understood as a medical issue.
Right.
But if a young person in Mount Vernon has a heroin problem, it's understood as a criminal justice issue.
I
And
agree.
that is the
Right.
problem.
I agree.
Right. Well, let's just look at the what's the thing? What's going on now? The
Opiate?
yeah, look at the opiate.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's it's a health crisis. You didn't say that in the crack era. You
Absolutely
didn't say
correct.
you didn't say it was a health crisis in the crack era. So we see that, But going back to when you talk about the politicians, right? That's the greatest part, is understanding the political process that plays in how your community is policed. And unfortunately, for poor communities or black communities, they don't get it.
James Foreman Jr., African-American man, his father was an important leader in the civil rights movement. He was a public defender in Washington, D.C. He's written an amazing new book called Locking Up Our Own. And he says, look, D.C., black mayor, black police commissioner, black police officers, and yet they wage the war on drugs harder than anyone there. And he talks about politically how we got into that mess and how destructive it was.
Oh, it was. It
how
was.
incredibly destructive. And how, at the end of it, anybody could still get any kind of drugs they wanted.
Right.
It did
Right.
nothing to make anyone safer or healthier. It just criminalized massive numbers of
Right.
young men of color.
But I think DC, they're trying to correct that wrong. I think
They're making progress.
Yeah, they have the Department of Returning Citizens, which is a great department, and which I think a lot of black communities need, a lot of underprivileged need, to help people get on that track.
But
and
the
work
other
along.
reentry things can be important, but
Right.
it's better to intervene before the damage is
Oh,
done.
of course.
And so one
Absolutely.
of the most important things DC has done is they've legalized marijuana,
Right.
which is a way of saying
Yeah.
police should have nothing to do with
Right.
marijuana.
Right.
And now there's a proposal to legalize sex work, to decriminalize sex work, to say that whatever problems there are with prostitution, if it's non-coercive, the police shouldn't have anything to do with it. It should be understood as an economic development issue. It should be understood as a public health issue. We can have public health messaging about it, but the police have never played a positive role in reducing the harms associated with sex work.
No.
And so let's just get them out of that business altogether. So that's 2 chapters of the book right there.
Yeah, but
War
you know-
on drugs, sex work.
And
as
that's
examples.
good, but and then in places like New York and other places, then it becomes a police economic issue, because then they lose overtime, they lose funding, they lose this, and then a lot of it is how do we make money with the police? Let's not be fooled that there's not millions of coming in to these police departments. Like some of them, especially the big ones like New York City, they're getting a lot of money for these initiatives, for these fighting crime initiatives, and the police officers are making a lot of overtime over these fighting crime initiatives. So they want to keep that money train going.
This is a great point. I train young people who want to go to law enforcement. Robert, I'm sure you've had some of these students.
Yeah, I've had
but
a
when
few.
when you talk to them, they're like, I want to do something to help the community. They're not in it because they want to beat people up or they're
But when they find out,
authoritarians.
it's totally
Right,
different.
but my point is that you say, yeah, well, there's an economic issue here because people want those jobs because those are good-paying jobs with good benefits, early
Right.
retirement. But you know what? What if we offered them other kinds of jobs to help the community? a lot of these young people would rather help the community in other ways
Right.
than having to arrest people.
Right.
If we gave them those pathways to employment, we would see a huge shift of student interest. I just know this firsthand, that they would rather be community workers. You know, it used to be in New York, we had gang problems in the 60s and 70s. Instead of taking it as primarily a police problem, they hired scores of young people from New York City neighborhoods and sent them out as gang workers to try to help redirect young people, reduce the amount of violence, and it was very successful. At the same time, cities like Los Angeles and Chicago, they went for heavy-handed policing. And what did they get? More gangs
Right.
existing
Absolutely.
for generations. It did not work.
Resistance, yeah.
And resistance to it, right? Which then just escalates, and then some of the most horrible police abuses we saw in Los Angeles, the Rampart scandal, the selling of drugs, these were gang units
Mm-hmm.
who were insulated, who felt they were the only ones who knew what life was like out on the streets, and they were told, do whatever it takes. Not by their immediate commander, but by the political officials in Los Angeles. And that had produced tremendous harms for those communities, and it did nothing to get rid of the gang problem.
No, you're absolutely right.
That's chapter 8.
I want to interrupt.
Absolutely right.
I want to interrupt. You know, we had 3 guests. As our first guest was leaving, our second guest was supposed to be Judge Arlene Gordon Oliver, who's running for Westchester County Family Court. We went to bring her in. She was not there. We were trying to figure out what's going on. I just got a text message of them apologizing. She got very sick, and Crystal said she had to take her home. So I just want to anybody who was waiting to see her or expecting to see her, that's why she's not here. And that's what happened in between there real quick.
Well, please extend our well wishes.
Yes.
For a speedy recovery.
And she's welcome to come back next week.
Okay.
I guess, right? We can fit it back.
We'll make it happen.
Did I say it too fast?
Lorraine, who do we have on next week?
Nobody.
Okay.
I know of.
Okay. That doesn't mean, but yeah, okay. That just means you don't have it on your paper. I might not have said it. I have to look.
Alex, one of the purposes of your book is to really challenge the prevailing conception of the role of police in our society. And you lay out the case fully in your second chapter, which is entitled, "The Police Are Not Here to Help You." And
Wow.
I like that.
I think it really does. I think there you begin to lay out in full one of the fundamental criticisms that you have with the role of police in our society, and that is, they're here to manage disorderly populations. And so you've mentioned them, people of color, poor people, working class.
Immigrants, homeless people. Yeah.
Homeless people. You take it, whoever is believed to pose a threat to, I guess, middle class stability, is one of those target populations. But I wanted you to say a little bit more about why in particular you do not believe that the tools that police ordinarily use in their day-to-day routines really are going to help them to deal with some of the, I'll call them problem populations, that they frequently come into contact with, and therefore why the kind of reform proposals that are on the table now are never going to get us out of this, systemic kind of police violence that we're seeing.
We're caught up in this completely backwards approach right now to problems. Mm-hmm. So imagine you're a community that has very real crime and disorder problems.
That's not hard for us to imagine.
Not hard for us to imagine, okay? But what's hard for us to imagine is an approach that says, let's start from the position where the community and local government sit down at the table together with all the resources of both on the table. And we say, let's try to figure out the best way to solve our problems. And we could have some principles for that. We could say it should be cost effective. The things we choose should work. We should have evidence from others that they've worked in the past, that they work in other places. We should do it in a way that costs the least reasonable amount of money. It should be efficiently done. It should be legal. The things we do should be constitutional, should follow the rule of law. Mm-hmm. And finally, we should try to treat people with as much dignity as we can. And if we did that, policing would often be pretty far down on the list of things the community would choose. And in fact, we had an example of this recently up in Ithaca, New York, upstate. They have an opioid problem, like a lot of places. And the mayor said, you know what? A lot of neighboring towns are doubling down on more narcotics officers, more raids, charging the dealers with homicide if there's an overdose. Maybe we should step back and say, let's bring in some experts, public health experts, criminal justice experts, people with experience of addiction personally, people who've been in the criminal justice system personally, community leaders. Let's have a series of public conversations about what we could do to make progress on this. And out of that came what's called the Ithaca Plan. And it calls for things like drug treatment on demand, safe injection facilities, needle exchange, improved training for health workers, public health messaging, and more programs to divert people out of the criminal justice system.
Yeah, but that's common sense thinking.
But what we do is exactly the opposite.
Right.
What we do is exactly opposite. We say to the community, there's one resource you can have to solve your problem, and that's police.
Right.
So whatever you want to do, it has to be something the police can do. Otherwise, you can't have it.
We have a couple of comments. But one person said, and I'm not sure what part they were talking about, they said profiling. You forgot about that one. That was Eddie Ortiz. And Tasha said maybe mental health police, who are mental health professionals who are trained as police, like recruit mental health majors into police force like they are in environmental police.
I'm going to take the racial profiling and traffic stops, pretextual stops. That's all great stuff. We can talk about that maybe later, but I want to take this mental health one. So I've been studying policing for over 25 years now, here in the United States and around the world. So earlier this year I was in the UK on patrol with police there, and I was there specifically to look at mental health issues. I've visited lockups, police stations. The vast majority of mental health emergency calls in the UK go to a completely separate number from 911. They're answered by the National Health Service, and a trained mental health nurse is dispatched. In cases where there's a claim that maybe there's a threat of violence, that the situation is dangerous, a police officer and a mental health nurse are sent together, but the interaction is under the authority of the mental health nurse, and the police officer stays out of the way unless called upon. And because they have a national health care system, in the dispatch room with the police is a trained mental health nurse who has access to the mental health records associated with that address or the person that, and can advise them while they're en route about what to expect, what medication, what's the diagnosis, right? There are mental health nurses in the lockup who immediately evaluate anyone and divert them from jail if the underlying problem is really just a mental health problem. The police in England have actually sued local government for failure to provide adequate mental health services, forcing them to take on that role, which they do not want, because it's nothing but trouble for them. Nothing. So we don't need police to look more like mental health practitioners. We need more mental health practitioners.
Period.
Period, because they are perfectly capable of doing this work.
I totally agree. But you're looking...
Chapter 4.
Right. But you're looking. I mean, you're looking at a capitalistic system. You're looking at police unions. You know, you're looking at the back to the structure. That they will continue to do this. You know, just like in New York, right? They closed down all the psychiatric hospitals, right? So,
Yep.
So now I'm a correction officer. I'm the new psychiatric orderly.
The three largest mental health facilities in the United States are Rikers Island, the L.A. County Jail, and the Cook County Jail in Chicago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have to go to training to learn how to deal with mentally ill people now. You know, and I think
most of whom are there on low-level charges.
Of course.
Broken windows kind of stuff, because their mental health issue wasn't being dealt with.
Right.
They had no access to stable community-based care, so then it falls on police and corrections to manage the problem.
That's
and
right.
No matter how much training you have, you don't really have the tools to resolve their problem.
And
you're just trying to keep stuff from coming unglued.
And neither do the people in jail, because they get to jail, and now the jail health service is privatized, so they're not even getting the actual help.
And
help that they need there.
What could be a worse environment for getting someone better than putting them in a cage?
Right.
That's not helping them get better.
Not absolutely not.
And on top of that, I mean, one criteria you did of the 5 that you had just identified for sound, rational policing.
Well, community problem solving.
Right. Problem solving and the efficient use of money, the public funds. And I wanted to underscore this because your book is chock full of statistical analysis about the lack of efficiency.
There are a lot of cost-saving measures in this book.
Right. And basically your point is that, look, mental, and I remember this statistic, people with mental illness are 16 times more likely to be killed by a police officer.
It's a quarter of all people killed by police in the United States are having a mental health crisis at the time they're killed. It's 1 out of every 4.
Okay.
And there's been some research done in Florida and California and Utah, here, even some here in New York. There are people, homeless, mentally ill, where local government is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to cycle one person through jails, shelters, emergency rooms. For that kind of money, we could put them up in a 5-star hotel and give them a butler.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be causing anyone any problems. But we won't do that. We continue to cycle them through these systems, none of which help them get any better. And then the community ends up still having to deal with this person.
And the policing of persons with mental illness really runs parallel to the policing of people who have other serious social challenges that they're dealing with. And so one of your chapters is devoted to the increased effort to try to reestablish order in our especially highly valued downtown areas that are targeted for redevelopment by pushing out homeless people. And essentially what you're arguing in your book is that we've criminalized several classes of people who really just have challenges. And, you know, our preferred method of dealing with them is to lock them up instead of addressing some of these root problems.
You know, in Seattle, they have a policy of banishment.
Right.
People get arrested not for serious crime, but for the kind of stuff that homeless people do, mentally ill people do, people involved in street prostitution do, you know, drinking in public, pissing in public, disorderly conduct. And they get a court order that banishes them from a particular park or neighborhood, and often these are the developed downtown commercial areas. And so rather than solve these people's problem, they get arrested and they literally get banished. And this is the state of affairs. The local government has basically given up on the idea that they can actually solve any of these problems. They're so wedded to this politics of austerity that the only thing they can do is give tax breaks and incentives to those who are already the most successful and the most wealthy, in hopes that some of that will magically trickle down to the rest of us,
Right.
while cutting services, education, health care, everything else. And then you got mass homelessness, you got homeless people wandering the streets like ghosts, you've got kids with nothing to do, and what do we do about them? We turn them into a police problem to be dealt with by jails, tickets, threats, etc. That's the mess we're in. So we're not going to get out of this police problem until we directly take on this politics of austerity and say we need an economic system that produces social goods for a broader group of people than just the 1/10 of 1%.
Well, now you're back to people being bamboozled by the elected officials.
Well, that's definitely part of it. I mean, they're getting their marching orders as well, right? Look at who's paying for the campaigns. We got Governor Cuomo here. His campaign entirely financed by hedge fund people. There were no $20 checks in his campaign treasury. Let me tell you, because we looked at it.
Okay.
Right?
Not at all.
The average contribution was like $5,000. So it's completely out of control, and that's why he's like, we got to cut the state employees' wages. We got to cut funding for CUNY and SUNY. We got to keep it right. Then he's like, but I'm for gay marriage, so everything's good. I'm a progressive, right? Or I gave some scholarships to kids whose families make $80, $90, $100,000 a year, therefore I'm a progressive. But I'm actually making it tougher for the kids whose families make $20, $30, $40, $50, $60,000 a year.
Right.
Alex, can a lot of us are only able to apprehend, political dynamics in the United States over our lifetimes, and for many people, they're not very, serious students of history. You don't have to be. You're doing other things to get along in life, and so I think many people are simply unaware of the immense changes that have occurred in the U.S. economy, the global economy, over the past century, roughly. Many scholars talk about this in terms of the urban crisis and connect the shift in public policy and increased emphasis on policing and broken windows style policing in particular to this urban crisis. And I wondered if you could just provide the listeners with a broader context of what has gone on, that how is, the neglect of the economy connected to all of the problems with policing that we're seeing here.
American history in 3 minutes or less?
Yes.
The history. Well, I think I'll just say one thing, which is that the early 1970s are very important because a whole host of things come to a head at that point. In post-war America, there's direct federal government subsidization of white flight, the development of suburbs. They do this through the building of the interstate highway system, federal loans, guaranteed loans, the GI Bill, and all this stuff is racially restricted. Only whites are allowed to benefit from this, and overwhelmingly.
Right.
And so what's left behind are cities that have a disproportionately high number of fairly low-income folks. At the same time, this is when globalization kicks in. And jobs that had produced stable middle-class wages for folks with just a high school degree, they all evaporate. They move to places like Mexico initially, and then to China and other places around the world. So there are no jobs anymore. What's left are service jobs that are low-skilled, low-paying, and a lot of under- and unemployment. And it's, of course, heavily concentrated among people of color. And so the tax base is eroded by the white flight and the end of industrialization, and what's left is this incredibly polarized economy of high finance, corporate headquarters, insurance industry, real estate folks. Those people are making huge amounts of money, more money than they've ever made, but everyone else, their standard of living is declining. And we get caught in a double bind because those rich folks and their friends who like to come visit New York or San Francisco or Los Angeles, whatever, They buy up apartments, they buy up buildings on speculation, they engage in all this investment that then ramps up the cost of living for everyone else. So the only trickle down we get is not better wages. The only trickle down we get is higher housing costs that are driven by this explosion of wealth at the top of the economy. So we're making less while our rent is going up. That's the dilemma we're in.
And for you, well, say, as you know, because you know I provided you at least with a little bit of background for the local situation. As I indicated in some of the articles that I sent you to take a look at, indicated the current mayor of Mount Vernon and some of the most influential political actors, but by no means all, are very strong proponents of a broken windows policing policy. And as a matter of fact,
Mount Vernon?
Absolutely.
Mount Vernon's just broken.
Not just, not just the windows.
Not just the windows. the whole system is broken, and it's really unfortunate for such a small city.
This is the first radio show with sound effects. I'm enjoying it. Thank you.
No, it's the whole system is broken, and I think it does a disservice to a community. You know, when you look at policies, and you know, I looked at policies a lot of the 43 municipalities, and a lot of them are copied and paste. You know, they're not even like written policies, and they barely. There's no police department that has national accreditation. Which if it means anything, it really doesn't mean anything. It's good for the police to say it, but the problem in Mount Vernon is that they just allowed a ship that has holes in it, and other police departments too. Don't get me wrong. They have a ship that has holes in it, and they're just, you know, trying to put little putty to keep it, you know, and sooner or later it's going to sink, you know, and what you see in the reflection is you see the community and a broken political process. That's
well, I think that's where you're always going to find a broken political process underneath these kinds of policing problems, because it's never just about the police. As much as the police try to insulate themselves politically, and there have been examples like L.A. under Daryl Gates where there was very little accountability, even to the elected leadership. In most of these places, the police chief, commissioner, whatever, is working for the mayor as a political ally of the mayor. They're meeting regularly. These things are all being worked out together to one degree or another. And the question is, let's go back to the priorities I laid out earlier. Is the city of Mount Vernon going to communities and saying, we have limited resources, but we have some resources, and let's figure out the best, most cost-effective, just, humane way to solve these problems? Or are they saying the only option on the table is to ramp up policing?
Only option on the table. We need more police. We need more police. We need more police. And that's not the answer.
To me, that's a failed politics. That's a failed politics, and that's what communities should not stand for. They should say, look, yes, we have problems, and we want you to deal with them, but we don't want our nephews, our children, to be criminalized as the solution.
Right.
Max said, what policy? They don't got no damn police commissioner to lead.
well, that's a whole nother story.
But that's also a political failure.
Right. Of course. Of course.
Alex, what do you think are? I got to tell you, man, because listen, almost with the exception of, well, I don't want to say the people that I'm around, but I mean,
yeah, you can say that.
We are kind of the standard bearers of, you know, progressivism.
I'm in with the opposition here.
Yes, you are. You're at home, Alex.
Yeah, right. You just
welcome back.
Look, you just don't know how.
No, but and in turn, I mean,
should I watch it when I step out here tonight?
Alex, I won't tell you that I've thought about watching my back lately. But I wanted you to just, because there seems to be such widespread support of broken windows policing, policy. I hear people. I've heard the mayor invoke it in his
Yeah.
posts. I've actually heard people invoke it.
What mayor?
Mayor Thomas.
Broken windows?
Yeah, in one of the posts
Yeah,
that my
Oh,
I,
Jesus
you remember
Christ,
I wrote
man.
that? I wrote a little thing.
He's
and-
upset
yeah.
about people pissing in public, and we got to
Oh,
have zero tolerance.
Yeah,
and-
yeah. I mean, listen.
Right. It was funny because he almost used the words of one book that you cited, the chasing after dirt bags.
Yes.
He said, we're going to get these dirt bags. And I just wanted to know if you could share with our audience
Amazing.
your
man.
perception of what are the misguided underlying
Yeah.
assumptions of broken windows.
Broken windows is appealing, I think, because people really are dealing with big problems in their communities, and they want some relief. And when you've been told for 40 years that the only thing you can have is more police, then people will ask for more police. They want a police-based solution. And for politicians, it's fantastic
Right.
because policing is flexible. It already exists. We just give it some new marching orders. And it allows us to keep doing business as usual on every other front. We don't have to redirect resources. We don't have to give communities more power. We don't have to raise taxes on folks who have more resources. We don't have to demand anything of state government or the federal government. We just criminalize people. And the state of New York, pays the bill for everyone we send upstate. And the county pays for, the people in jail.
Mm-hmm.
So the roots of the broken windows theory, in my view, are profoundly racist. If you look at the theoretical writing of the folks who were in this community out of which these ideas came from, their view was that poor people were fundamentally incapable of managing their own affairs, and that if you tried to give them something positive, they would just ruin it. And so the only thing they understand is the lash. That we got to send the police out there to micromanage their public behavior through threats, intimidation, tickets, arrests, summonses, the whole 9 yards. And if people don't respond to that, then we just escalate that.
That. So I live on 7th Avenue, and there's been a whole lot of shootings like on the street over 8th Avenue, and it's been going on forever. So I guess 2 Sundays ago, while I was getting ready for the show, I heard like 8 shots. It was like broad daylight, and then I guess the next day there was some shots fired early in the day, like when kids were going to school, like 7 something. So now we got the big mobile unit out there. When you're going through, it's almost like a checkpoint. Bob had to pick me up. We had to stop at the corner so they could flash the light in to see who we were, and like the whole 9. Okay, so yeah, it's a little quieter in my area now, but the shooters are just on the other side of town now. I mean, like it didn't stop the shootings. Like it didn't stop.
Fix the beefs that were driving the
Right.
shootings.
So they're just not shooting on 8th Avenue now.
Yeah.
You know
well,
what I'm saying?
this is a common thing, right? It's just it's a process of displacement. But who's out there trying to figure out what's driving these
I appreciate
beefs?
it being quiet, though. I appreciate the new quiet, though.
Yeah,
I do
of course.
appreciate
and
that.
we want the shootings to stop. We're desperate to have the shootings stop. These are our kids, right, that are getting shot, or
Shooting
we're
each
at
other.
risk.
Or
Yeah,
shooting each other.
Yeah, it's tragic, right? The question is, what would actually be effective in reducing that? So we just had a major study released in New York last week. John Jay College of Criminal Justice is studying the cure violence sites that we've established in New York City. These are community-based anti-violence initiatives that use violence interrupters, public health messaging, social services for young people and their families, pro-social activities. They did a controlled experiment. They took 2 neighborhoods that had cure violence sites, South Bronx and East New York. These are tough areas with a lot of violence, and they paired them with East Harlem and East Flatbush, 2 also very rough neighborhoods. East Harlem and East Flatbush got no cure violence intervention, and the other 2 neighborhoods did. East Harlem had a 5% reduction in gun violence, and the Bronx neighborhood had a 50% reduction.
And that's a recent report.
Yeah, just last week.
Oh, great.
Just last week.
Bob, you got to give me the report.
Yeah.
I will be sure to.
So
Yeah,
now
well,
I have to go.
Yes.
I really
Our time
enjoy.
is-
No, you're good. You're good.
No,
You're
you're
good.
good. I have to go. Promise my wife I'll meet her somewhere. But
A man who has his priorities straight.
Good for you, Damon.
Law and order, right?
that's
one place it works.
And I've been for the
Coercive
15
state
minutes like, yo, you got 9 minutes.
Yeah, but,
Now, that was 6 minutes ago.
I enjoyed this conversation, and I'm definitely going to get your book.
I
man.
want to
And-
thank
and
you for your
thank
time and
Thank
thoughtful
you.
commentary.
Matter of fact, I'm getting 2. I'm going one for myself and one for Joe Spezio, and I'm going to mail it to
Okay.
Joe Spezio so he can learn how to
In
be
a
a
plain
real
brown
police-
wrapper.
Right, and so he can learn how to be a thinking commissioner.
That would
So,
be great.
Thank you very much, man.
You're most welcome. Thank
Shout
you.
out to everybody that's tuned in. Ken Bright, Anthony Old School Mitchell, Naz Duncan. Who else that we didn't say before? Clack Jeff, Donald Pierce, ID, Kim Cauldron, Stephen Gibbs from Atlanta, Clinton Young, former Mayor Clinton Young.
Really?
Yes.
He wouldn't come on the show, but he's listening.
Don Powell from New Rochelle, Nadine Hunt Robinson, that's Councilwoman from White Plains, Simone Combs, that's Patty's sister, Martez Carter, Corey Pegues, author of Once a Cop, former NYPD inspector. I think I got most of y'all that I didn't get before. Tanisha Nash, Laird. Not sure how to pronounce that, but thank you. Kevin Hope from the Mount Vernon Fire Department. Nicole Page. Believe it or not, Bishop Collie Nathan Edwards. Joe
Bishop.
For real. It says it's joined in. I don't know if he's still there. At some point, he joined in the conversation and was listening. Nasda, I said Chris Birch, Nicole Jones, Loyola Holloway, Damon Bacote. I just talked to him earlier. He's behind the whole Snugs thing. Snugs around the thing. We're going to do a big thing on Snugs soon. Nesto Acusto, DJ Nesto from like Virginia or somewhere. What's up, fam?
Yes, sir.
Carmen Gomez Goldberg, Yonkers. And there's a few others who said hi, Lorraine, AJ, and DK Jones. And Max said much love to her. She said, love you, Max. Lorraine, oh, that's you saying hi, Susie. Who's Susie? Your sister?
Susan Rivera, yeah,
Oh.
she tuned in.
Okay, hey, Susie. All right, that's everybody. I just wanted to make sure we kind of get, our people that's listening. Couple of comments. Ken Bright was saying, while y'all going, he was saying broken windows while y'all talking about that. School to prison pipeline while y'all talking about that. He was
Right.
chiming in as you were.
Right.
Let's talk about that.
Yes.
Glenn Butler
That's chapter
just
3.
joined.
And
Yes.
Shout out to Glenn Butler. He just said good evening. Go ahead.
Yes, what? So, yeah, I mean, it's appropriate that he should mention the school to prison pipeline because you also do have a chapter dedicated to it. I have to say some of your findings and insights reminded me a little of my own dissertation research because I studied, did a dissertation on causes of Latino high school dropout. And as you note, the backdrop for the crisis in urban education that we're experiencing has been the spread of this kind of zero tolerance model of public policing now to our schools as well. And you illustrate, just how damaging it can be for our education. And so why don't you, elaborate? That's all I'll say.
Yeah, well, first, you make a point about the fact that, in a way, there's not a ton in the book that's totally original. And it doesn't claim to be totally original.
Right.
This book is built on the work of hundreds of scholars and, just as importantly, hundreds of community activists around the country who are doing the work of trying to build safer neighborhoods without putting more people in prison. And the book tries to give as much credit as it can to all the people out there
Right.
doing that thinking and doing that work. And there's a long suggested readings list of amazing books that are being written. And since the book came out, some more amazing books. Paul Butler's book, Chokehold, African American former prosecutor, who
frequently appears on.
Who just rejects what he used to do, and says we need to just quit turning to the police to solve our problems as an African American community. That's a really powerful one. Andrea Ritchie's new book, Invisible No More, about the treatment of women in the criminal justice system and by police, etc. So the work is happening. So school to prison pipeline. You know, the whole undertaking is misguided and counterproductive and based on totally erroneous causes. So in the 90s, there were two important events that drove the creation of school policing. One was the invention of this totally false myth of the super predator, of the youthful super predator who'd sooner kill you as look at you. And this was developed by another one of these ultra-conservative guys like James Q. Wilson, who invented the broken windows theory, to justify widespread repression of young people of color. He used the thinnest of data with no real peer review, but he became a champion of all these politicians and conservative media types who wanted more crackdowns on young people of color. And so every single year after he said we were going to get this explosion of sociopathic youth violence, every single year youth crime has fallen.
Right.
He was completely wrong. And yet, that was the main basis for the creation of school police forces in the United States, including a massive infusion of funds from the Clinton administration. The second factor, which tied into all
the
this.
The super predator came from Clinton herself, right?
She borrowed it.
She borrowed it.
Oh, she borrowed it.
She just popularized it.
She borrowed it.
She
It came from
popularized it.
Giulio.
Okay.
And she was one of the people who popularized it to justify the crime bill and the expansion of school policing. The other thing was the Columbine shooting that happens about the same period. White suburban upper middle class community. And so now everyone's freaked out. We need to have, cops with machine guns in every school. Well, there were armed police that day at Columbine in the school with guns, and they did nothing. They were unable to do anything about it. And the idea that, well, if we had just had more people with guns in the school, everyone would be safer, that this is just not true. It just turns more of our problems into gun problems.
There was a thing that came out that they were unable to do certain things because of the way the law is. Like they were unable to do. I remember there was a big talk about it. I can't remember.
Here's the thing: is that before Columbine, the standard police response was to gather at the scene until you had sufficient numbers to safely enter the premises to try to take someone down. And in the meantime, everyone's already dead. So that was a big failure. But the two armed officers at Columbine that day did not do that. They attempted to intervene immediately and were shot at and had to retreat.
Okay.
Now we have a different protocol for active shooter situations, which is whoever gets there first, even though this is very dangerous for them, needs to try to intervene immediately, because every second that you wait, more people are going to get killed.
Right.
So it puts those officers in a horrible dilemma because they may not have body armor, they may not have long guns and the kinds of things that a SWAT team might have, but by the time the SWAT team gets there, the damage is already over for the most part. And in fact, the assailant often has already killed themselves. So that's the deal on that. But either way, having more police in schools is not a solution to this. First of all, schools are the safest place that young people spend time in their lives. It's safer than their homes. It's safer than the community. It's safer than a workplace. The whole idea that we needed this was fundamentally in error and based on a lot of racism. Because the super predator myth was not about white kids.
Right.
Right.
It was, everyone understood, right? It was more of this dog whistle stuff.
Right.
The solution is to actually deal with the problems these young people have. And we can do that through restorative justice programs, through the creation of community-based social service hubs called community schools that are being done in some parts of the country, that view the school as a resource in solving community problems, not just for the young people, but for their families and their neighbors, because we know that the vast majority of problems that come in the school come from outside the school. Young people bring them with them.
Right.
This is why teachers cannot fix all these things, because these are not school problems.
Right. I wanted to interrupt you real quick. We are coming to the end of the show, and I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to tell people where the book's available, any website stuff where they can find out more about you and the book, that kind of stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, so the book is widely available. It's in bookstores. It's on Amazon. It's through Verso Press, which for I think another hour or two is having a 40% off discount, but it's also very inexpensive on Amazon. And folks can follow me on Twitter at @avitale, AVITALE, and I'm easy to find on the internet.
Well, I saw that because when I'm doing the Black Westchester site, and I often check the stats, and I also check to see where it shows you where people clicked on to come to your site. I was like, hey, Vitaly, what's this? Clicked on it and said, upcoming appearances.
Yes, I try to let people know.
Yeah.
I'm glad it sounds like some people clicked through.
Yes, so several people clicked through a couple of days. So I was like, and I took the little image and put it on our Instagram page too. So
Good.
Yeah, but I was like, that's how I found it. I was like, oh, okay. I wish more people would do that.
If you go to my website, alex-vitale.info, you can see reviews of the book, clippings, lots of news stories, television interviews, etc. So you can check out some of these ideas further.
You can also see some of the professional activities that Alex has been involved with over the years. And since the mayor recently posted on his Facebook page that he invites the city council to share new and innovative ideas for policing policy in the city of Mount Vernon, I'd like to firstly note that in addition to being a full professor who focuses on issues of criminal justice, that Dr. Vitale is also the director of the Policing and Social Justice Program at Brooklyn College. And so he has both scholarly research.
I also sit on the New York State Advisory Committee to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. So I'm involved in federal investigations at places like Rikers Island and do tours of facilities and write reports for the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights.
Real short, real quick, what's next for you?
What's next for me? Well, right now I'm working a lot on gang policing issues in the city, and there's a lot of concern about the large-scale gang raids that are happening, where they're coming in, arresting 100 young people, charging them all with these elaborate conspiracy charges, sometimes in the federal system. And it's our feeling that a lot of this is a way of replacing stop and frisk with a new kind of gang database, gang policing model. That's just another way to criminalize these young people instead of actually dealing with their problems.
Yeah, man, we could have this conversation. We got to have you come back another time too, because this is definitely the kind of stuff we like to talk about.
Anytime.
Because it's a political season, we have a lot of politicians running in more than normal. So I definitely thank you for coming. Looking forward to speaking with you again. We definitely going to do a spotlight on you on the website and try to do something in the paper as well.
Much appreciated.
And although I'm not twisting Alex's arm behind his back, I can assure all of our city officials that, if you want to tap into his expertise, I'm sure he's happy to share it.
Of course.
And would be,
I frequently testify at the New York City City Council and write testimony for others, etc.
Okay, cool. That's what's up. Yeah, so I want to thank everybody who came through, everybody who listened. A couple of names I didn't even get to, people in Atlanta. We got a lot of people checking us out tonight. All the issues that we discussed earlier are on blackwestchester.com. Again, don't forget to check out the Ray Lewis tribute. Ray Williams tribute. He would have been 63 yesterday. So Black Westchester paid tribute to him. So happy birthday to him. Happy birthday to Lorraine coming up in 4 days. Happy birthday again to DJ Cruz and Priscilla Ichi. That's it. Next week, I'm not sure who's coming on next week. We're still trying to work on the city council debate. We have not got confirmation from everyone. I think the New Vision side definitely wants to do it. I'm getting resistance from the other side telling I need to talk to Reggie Lafayette and get it approved by him. That's not going to happen. So either the candidates are going to show up or they're not. So anyway, we're still working on that debate. And thank you. Oh, subscriptions. We're running out of the paper everywhere this month. So we're pushing the home subscriptions. We have that now. blackwestchester.com/subscribe. You can sign up. It's $25 for the year to get 12 copies delivered to your house. Take advantage of that. Advertise. Deadline is coming up in about 4 or 5 days. So if you haven't got your advertisement in, definitely make that happen. You could be doing anything else right now, but you decide to ride with us, and we greatly appreciate it. This is Black Westchester presents People Before Politics Radio every Sunday 6 to 8 on In the Mix Radio.
22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.